Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper, where forgotten civilizations, unexplained wonders, and ancient secrets come back to life. Ready to unravel the mystery? Let's begin the journey. Beneath the quiet green fields of Hertfordshire, England, lies a forgotten chapter of the Roman Empire. Over 1,000 artifacts, from coins to complex tools, have been unearthed, painting a picture not of a sleepy backwater, but of a bustling and wealthy community. This is a story of a hidden history, right under our feet. History is not always found in the grand, sweeping narratives of textbooks or in the monumental ruins of famous cities. Sometimes the most profound and surprising stories are hidden just beneath the surface of our everyday world, lying dormant under quiet fields and unassuming landscapes, waiting for a chance discovery to bring them back into the light. Our journey today does not take us to the Colosseum in Rome or the well-trodden paths of Pompeii. It takes us to the green and pleasant county of Hertfordshire in England, a place known more for its peaceful countryside and commuter towns than for its ancient secrets. It is here, in a location that for centuries was considered little more than ordinary farmland, that a forgotten chapter of the Roman Empire has been slowly and spectacularly unearthed. This is not a story of a single famous monument, but of 1,000 small whispers from the past, a cascade of artifacts that, when brought together, begin to tell a new and unexpected story of life in Roman Britain. Our investigation begins, as so many great discoveries do, not with a team of professional archaeologists, but with the quiet patience of a single individual and the hopeful beep of a machine. The story begins with a familiar scene in the English countryside. A local enthusiast, armed with the metal detector, sweeping back and forth across a freshly plowed field. For metal detectorists, the thrill is in the hunt, the possibility that the next signal might not be a discarded piece of modern farm equipment or a worthless bit of foil, but a genuine piece of history. Most days end with a collection of rusty nails and bottle caps. But on one particular day, in a field whose exact location has been kept deliberately vague to protect it, the detectorist received a signal that was different. It was a clear, sharp tone that suggested a small non-ferrous object just below the surface. Carefully digging into the soil, the detectorist unearthed a small, dark, circular object. After gently brushing away the centuries of accumulated dirt, the unmistakable profile of a Roman emperor emerged. It was a coin, a small bronze nummus, lost or perhaps deliberately buried nearly 2,000 years ago. A single Roman coin found in a field in Britain is not, in itself, an earth-shattering discovery. The Romans occupied Britain for nearly 400 years, and their currency was widespread. A lost coin is simply evidence that someone at some point passed through this area. But this was just the beginning. Where there is one coin, there are often more. The detectorist returned to the same area, a grid of land that, to the naked eye, was utterly unremarkable. Another signal, another careful excavation. This time it was a piece of pottery, a fragment of reddish-brown Samian ware. This was more significant. Samian ware was the fine dining china of the Roman world, a high-quality, glossy pottery that was not made in Britain, but was imported all the way from the workshops of Gaul, in what is now modern-day France. To find it here suggested something more than just a soldier dropping a coin from his purse. It hinted at a settlement, a place where people lived, ate, and used high-status imported goods. The initial find was no longer just a lucky strike. It was the first clue in a growing mystery. The detectorist began to focus his efforts on this specific patch of land, and the find started to accumulate. Another coin, then another. A simple bronze brooch known as a fibula, the Roman equivalent of a safety pin, used to fasten a cloak. A bent iron nail of a distinctive Roman design. Each object on its own was a small, humble piece of the past. But together they began to paint a picture. This wasn't just a path that Romans had walked along. This was a place where Romans had lived. The quiet field was beginning to give up its secrets, and the single chance discovery was about to escalate into something far more significant. Word of the initial discoveries began to spread quietly within the tight-knit community of local amateur archaeologists and metal detectorists. This is a community driven by a deep passion for history, a network of dedicated individuals who spend their weekends searching for the physical remnants of the past. Hearing about the concentration of finds in this particular area, others were drawn to the site, always with the permission of the landowner. What had begun as the project of a single person soon evolved into a collaborative effort. And with more people searching, the rate of discovery accelerated dramatically. The collection of artifacts grew from a handful of items to dozens, and then to hundreds. The variety of the objects being found was astonishing. It was no longer just coins and pottery shards. The soil began to yield the intimate, personal belongings of the people who had lived here. Ornate brooches of all shapes and sizes were found, from simple functional dolphin types to more elaborate plate brooches decorated with colorful enamel. These were objects of fashion, evidence of people who cared about their appearance and had the means to adorn themselves. Keys were unearthed, small intricate bronze keys that once opened the doors to homes or locked away personal treasures in wooden chests. The discovery of a key is a particularly evocative find. It speaks of homes, of privacy, of possessions worth protecting. It transforms the abstract idea of a settlement into a tangible community of households. Fragments of Roman glass were found, some from simple bottles and jars, but others from more delicate and expensive drinking vessels. Like the Samian ware, much of this glass was not made locally but was a luxury import. Another sign of the wealth and connectivity of the people who lived here. The finds continued to mount. Small bronze cosmetic tools like tweezers and ear scoops hinted at the daily grooming rituals of the inhabitants. Lead weights, used for measuring goods on a balance scale, pointed towards commerce and trade. Gaming pieces, small counters made of bone or glass, spoke of leisure time, of people gathering to play games after a day's work. Each new artifact added another brushstroke to the emerging portrait of this lost community. It was becoming clear that this was not a small, impoverished farming hamlet. The quality and variety of the artifacts suggested a place of some substance, a bustling community with a complex social life, a connection to the wider Roman world, and a surprising degree of prosperity. The growing collection was no longer just a hobbyist treasure trove. It was becoming a significant archaeological assemblage, a historical puzzle that demanded a more professional and systematic approach. The sheer volume and importance of the finds could not remain a secret forever. The local enthusiasts, following the responsible protocols of their hobby, had been diligently recording their finds with the Portable Antiquities Scheme, a UK-wide program that allows the public to log archaeological objects they find. As the database of finds from this specific location swelled, it caught the attention of professional county archaeologists. They recognized that the concentration of artifacts was too great to be the result of random chance, or the simple loss of objects over time. It was clear evidence of a significant, undiscovered Roman settlement. This is the point where the story transitions from a passionate hobby to a formal scientific investigation. A professional archaeological unit was brought in to conduct a more thorough survey of the site. Their first step was not to dig, but to use non-invasive techniques to see what lay beneath the soil. They employed geophysical survey methods, such as magnetometry and ground-penetrating radar. These technologies allow archaeologists to X-ray the ground, detecting buried walls, ditches, and other man-made features without disturbing the soil. The results of the survey were stunning. The scans revealed the clear and unmistakable outlines of a planned settlement. A network of rectangular shapes appeared on their screens, indicating the stone foundations of numerous buildings. They could see the dark lines of ditches that had been dug for drainage or defense, and the faint traces of paths or streets that connected the buildings. This was the smoking gun. It confirmed that the scattered artifacts were not just from a refused pit or a lost hoard. They were coming from the remains of an entire town that had been lying dormant and invisible just inches beneath the plow soil for nearly 2 millennia. With this new evidence in hand, the team was able to plan a targeted excavation. Instead of digging randomly, they could now focus on the specific areas where the geophysical survey had indicated the presence of structures. The archaeologists carefully opened up trenches, painstakingly removing the topsoil layer by layer. And as they dug, the ghost town began to materialize. They uncovered the stone foundations of Roman-era buildings, revealing the layouts of houses and what appeared to be workshops. They found post holes, the dark circular stains in the soil that marked where wooden posts had once stood, allowing them to reconstruct the size and shape of timber-framed buildings. They excavated ditches filled with the discarded rubbish of the town's inhabitants' animal bones from their meals, broken pottery, and other lost or broken items, all of which provided an invaluable snapshot of their daily lives. The official excavation confirmed what the metal detectorists had long suspected. This was a major, organized, and long-lived Roman settlement. The work transformed the site from a collection of interesting objects into a place with a physical context, a layout, and a tangible presence. And as the professionals continued their careful work, the sheer scale of the material culture they and the detectorists had recovered became truly apparent. To date, the combined efforts of the amateur detectorists and the professional archaeologists have recovered more than 1,000 individual Roman artifacts from this single site. It is important to pause and appreciate the significance of that number. A hoard of 1,000 items represents one of the most substantial and diverse collections of Roman material ever found in this region of Britain. This is not a handful of coins or a few broken pots. This is a comprehensive assemblage that represents nearly every aspect of daily life in a Roman-era community. The collection includes hundreds of coins spanning a long period of Roman occupation, from the early days of the empire to its final decline in Britain in the late 4th century. This chronological range tells us that the settlement was not a short-lived, temporary camp. It was a stable community that existed and thrived for generations. The sheer quantity of currency also suggests a highly monetized local economy, a place where buying and selling was a constant, daily activity. The collection of personal items is equally impressive. The brooches, pins, and rings provide a catalog of Roman fashion, as it changed over the centuries. The tools, from knives and chisels to needles and loom weights, speak of a community that was not just consuming goods, but actively producing them. There is evidence of metalworking, leatherworking, and textile production. The presence of so many different types of artifacts allows archaeologists to build a remarkably detailed picture of the community. They can study the types of food they ate from the animal bones, the diseases they may have suffered from by analyzing any human remains, and the extent of their trade connections by analyzing the chemical composition of the pottery and glass. The scale of this hoard elevates the site from a local curiosity to a place of national archaeological importance. It represents a massive new dataset for understanding life in Roman Britain, particularly life outside the major, well-documented cities like London, Londinium, or St. Albans, Verulamium. This is a snapshot of the provincial world, the network of smaller towns and settlements that formed the true backbone of the Roman economy and society in the province. And yet, despite its clear importance, its wealth, and its size, this settlement remains a ghost. It is a town without a name, a vibrant community whose story was completely erased from the pages of history, leaving only 1,000 scattered objects in a quiet English field as proof that it ever existed at all. The discovery was complete, but the mystery was just beginning. The discovery of over 1,000 artifacts in a single Hertfordshire field is a monumental achievement in itself. It's a testament to the dedication of both amateur enthusiasts and professional archaeologists. But a collection of objects, no matter how large, is just a pile of old metal and broken pottery until we begin to ask what it can tell us. This is the true magic of archaeology. It is the science of breathing life back into the silent past, of taking these fragmented, forgotten objects and using them to reconstruct the world from which they came. Each coin, each brooch, each shard of glass is a clue. And when we assemble all these clues, we can begin to paint a remarkably vivid picture of this lost community. We can move beyond the simple fact that a settlement existed and start to understand who these people were, how they lived, how they worked, and what they valued. This is the next stage of our investigation. To take this treasure trove of relics and use it to resurrect the lost world of Roman Hertfordshire. Our first and most powerful clue to the nature of this community comes from the most numerous artifact found at the site: the money. The sheer number of Roman coins unearthed at this location is on its own a powerful statement. We are not talking about a small handful of lost change. We are talking about hundreds of individual coins, a continuous stream of currency that flowed through this community for centuries. This massive quantity of money immediately tells us something fundamental about the settlement. This was not a poor, isolated, subsistence-level village. This was a place with a vibrant and prosperous economy. In a simple subsistence economy, people trade goods for other goods in a system of barter. A farmer might trade a sack of grain for a new pot, or a leather worker might trade a pair of shoes for some meat. Money is not essential. But the abundance of coinage here indicates that this community had moved far beyond simple barter. This was a fully monetized economy, a place where goods and services were bought and sold using the official currency of the Roman Empire. The coins themselves tell a story. They are not all from the same emperor or the same time period. The collection includes coins from the early days of the Roman conquest of Britain in the 1st century AD, all the way through to the late 4th century, when Roman influence in the province was beginning to wane. This wide chronological spread proves that the settlement's economic activity was not a short-lived boom. It was a stable and sustained prosperity that lasted for generations. Let's imagine what this meant for the people living here. It meant there was a market, a place where goods were regularly exchanged. Farmers would bring their surplus crops: wheat, barley, vegetables to sell for cash. Craftsmen, potters, blacksmiths, weavers would sell their wares. This cash would then be used to buy things they couldn't produce themselves: a new tool, a piece of fine pottery, or a decorative item of jewelry. The constant circulation of coins, big and small, was the lifeblood of the community. The presence of both high-value coins, like silver denarii, and low-value bronze coins, like the as or the nummus, is also significant. It shows that transactions of all sizes were taking place, from the large-scale purchase of livestock or land down to the everyday buying of a loaf of bread or a cup of wine. This was a sophisticated and dynamic economic environment. It tells us that the people of this lost town were active participants in the great economic project of the Roman Empire. They were not living on the fringes. They were connected to the vast commercial network that stretched from the shores of Britain to the deserts of Syria. The wealth wasn't just in the hands of a single rich landowner. The sheer number and variety of the coins, found scattered across the entire site, suggests that money was in widespread use among a large portion of the population. This was a place of opportunity, a place where a skilled artisan or a savvy farmer could make a good living. The coins are the first and most undeniable piece of evidence that this forgotten settlement was a bustling hub of economic activity. But the evidence of their prosperity goes far beyond just their money. The objects they owned and used every day tell us that this was also a place of considerable style and status. When archaeologists unearth the remains of a community, they look not only for functional items, but also for objects of personal adornment. These items, jewelry, decorative accessories, and cosmetic tools, are a powerful indicator of a society's wealth, sophistication, and social structure. They tell us that people had moved beyond the basic needs of survival and had the resources and the desire to focus on their appearance and to display their social standing. And the collection from Hertfordshire is rich with such objects. The most common finds are the brooches or fibulae. Over 100 have been found, in a stunning variety of styles. There are simple functional dolphin and trumpet brooches, the everyday fasteners that almost everyone would have used to hold their cloaks together. But there are also far more elaborate and expensive examples. Archaeologists have found beautiful plate brooches, flat decorative pieces often shaped like animals or geometric patterns, and filled with vibrant colored enamel. They have found penannular brooches, a style with Celtic origins that remained popular into the Roman period. This variety is key. It shows that people had a choice. They could purchase a simple, cheap brooch, or they could invest in a more ornate and fashionable one to show off their wealth and good taste. This is the Roman equivalent of choosing between a simple cloth coat and a designer jacket. Beyond the brooches, other items of jewelry have been found. Intricate bronze and silver rings, some still bearing the carved gemstones or intaglios, that were used as personal seals to stamp documents in wax. The presence of seal rings is a clear sign of literacy and business dealings. You only need a personal seal if you are signing contracts or sending important letters. Delicate hairpins made of polished bone or jet were also discovered. Roman women, particularly those of higher status, wore elaborate hairstyles that required a whole array of pins and accessories to hold them in place. To find these here tells us that the women of this town were following the latest fashions of the Roman world, styles that might have been popular in Rome itself. The finds also include cosmetic implements, small bronze or bone liguli, slender scoops used for extracting and applying cosmetics like kohl for eyeliner or powdered minerals for eyeshadow from small pots, tiny tweezers for personal grooming. These are the contents of a Roman-era makeup bag. They are evidence of a society where people had the leisure time and the disposable income to invest in their personal appearance. Taken together, these objects paint a picture of a community that was far from a rustic backwater. The people who lived here were fashion conscious. They were aware of the wider trends of the Roman Empire and actively participated in them. They used material possessions to express their identity and their social status. To walk through the market of this lost town 2,000 years ago would not be to see a group of poor, downtrodden peasants. You would see people wearing colorful cloaks fastened with stylish brooches, women with elaborate hairstyles held in place with polished pins, and merchants stamping wax seals with their personal rings. This was a place with a clear social hierarchy, a place of aspiration, a place where displaying your wealth and sophistication mattered. The jewelry and personal items are a powerful testament to the community's prosperity and its deep engagement with the culture of Rome. And that engagement was not just cultural. It was built on a foundation of extensive physical trade connections that linked this small English settlement to the far corners of the empire. One of the most exciting aspects of modern archaeology is the ability to analyze artifacts and determine their precise origin. By studying the chemical composition of clay, the trace elements in metal, or the specific techniques used to make glass, scientists can often pinpoint the exact workshop or region where an object was made. This scientific analysis has been applied to the artifacts from Hertfordshire, and the results are extraordinary. They prove, beyond any doubt, that this was not an isolated, self-sufficient community. It was a well-connected settlement, a node in the vast and complex trade network that was the Roman Empire. The most compelling evidence comes from the pottery. While a great deal of simple, locally made grayware has been found, which was used for everyday cooking and storage, there is also a significant amount of high-status imported pottery. We have already mentioned the Samian ware from Gaul. Finding this glossy red pottery is always a sign of a high-status site, as it had to be carefully packed and shipped across the English Channel and then transported inland. But the connections go even further. Archaeologists have identified pottery from the Rhineland in Germany, and even fragments of amphoray-large clay jars used for transporting goods that originated in the Mediterranean, possibly carrying Spanish olive oil or Italian wine. Imagine the journey of one of these pots. A potter in central France shapes it on his wheel. It is fired in a kiln, stamped with the maker's mark, and then packed with thousands of others onto a barge to travel down a river to the coast. It is loaded onto a merchant ship, which braves the often dangerous crossing of the English Channel. It is unloaded at a port in southern Britain, perhaps near modern-day Dover or Richborough. It is then loaded onto a cart and travels for days along the network of Roman roads, passing through major cities like London, before finally ending its journey at a market stall in this small Hertfordshire town, where it is purchased by a local resident. Every single shard of this imported pottery tells a story of incredible connectivity. The same is true for the glassware. The Romans were masters of glass production, but many of the most sophisticated techniques were practiced in specific regions, such as the Rhineland or Syria. Fragments of delicate, colored glassware found at the Hertfordshire site have been traced back to these distant production centers. The people living in this town were drinking wine from glasses made in Germany, out of pots made in France. This completely shatters any image of a remote, isolated British settlement. These people were cosmopolitan consumers, enjoying the luxury goods that flowed from every corner of the Roman world. This trade was a two-way street. While the settlement was importing luxury goods, it must have been producing something of value to trade for them. The raw materials and finished goods of Britain, minerals like lead and tin, agricultural products like grain and wool, and perhaps most famously hunting dogs and slaves were highly prized in other parts of the empire. This Hertfordshire community was likely a key part of this export economy. It would have served as a collection point, a place where local produce and raw materials were gathered, processed, and then sent on their way down the Roman road network to the ports and out into the wider world. The artifacts prove that this forgotten settlement was not an endpoint. It was a crossroads, a vital link in the chain of commerce that bound the empire together. It was a place where local British resources met the globalized market of the Roman world, creating the wealth and prosperity that we now see reflected in the stunning collection of artifacts left behind. And the evidence suggests that this trade was not just in raw materials. This may have been a place of active production and industry. The collection of artifacts from the Hertfordshire site contains more than just coins, jewelry, and pottery. It also includes a significant number of tools and objects that point towards a community that was actively making things. This suggests that the settlement was not just a passive consumer of goods or a simple agricultural village. It may have been a vibrant center of local industry, a place where raw materials were transformed into finished products for trade and local use. The evidence for metalworking is particularly strong. Archaeologists have found crucibles, small ceramic bowls used for melting metal, still bearing the residue of bronze and lead. They have found pieces of scrap metal, offcuts, and failed castings, the telltale waste products of a blacksmith's or a bronze worker's shop. They have also found finished products that were likely made on site, such as simple functional tools, nails, and harness fittings. The presence of both the tools for making things and the waste from the process is a clear indication of active metalworking. This settlement may have had its own smithy, repairing tools for local farmers, making new household items, and perhaps even producing goods for trade with surrounding villages. There is also evidence for textile production. Numerous spindle whorls and loom weights have been discovered. Spindle whorls are small flywheel-like objects, often made of clay or bone, that were fitted to the bottom of a wooden spindle to help it spin wool into thread. Loom weights, often made of baked clay, were used to hold the vertical threads, the warp, taut on a loom. Finding these items in such quantity means that spinning and weaving were common household activities. This was likely done on a domestic scale, with families producing their own cloth for clothing and blankets. However, given Britain's reputation for producing high-quality wool, it is also possible that this settlement was a center for larger-scale textile production, creating woolen cloth that was a valuable export commodity. Other finds hint at other industries. The presence of leatherworking tools suggests that hides were being processed into shoes, belts, and other leather goods. The large number of animal bones, many with butcher marks on them, indicates not only a meat-rich diet, but also the potential for processing byproducts like bone for tools and horn for handles and other objects. When we combine all this evidence, the picture of the settlement becomes richer and more complex. This was not just a place where people lived and farmed. It was a place where people made things. It was a productive industrial hub, a hive of activity where the sounds of the blacksmith's hammer would have mixed with the clatter of the weaver's loom. This industrial capacity would have been the engine of the town's prosperity. They were creating value, transforming local raw materials into finished goods that could be used by the community or, more importantly, sold for a profit. This industrial dimension is crucial to understanding the settlement's character. It helps explain the concentration of wealth and the extensive trade connections. The people here were not just buying luxury goods. They were earning the money to pay for them through their own skill and industry. This detailed picture, built piece by piece from the 1,000 artifacts left behind, reveals a forgotten world. It was a prosperous, stylish, well-connected, and industrious community. It was, in every sense, a successful and thriving part of Roman Britain. And this makes the central mystery of the site all the more profound. If this place was so successful and so significant, why was it completely forgotten? Why does a place with such a vibrant past have no recorded history? The artifacts have told us a remarkable story. From over 1,000 scattered objects, a vivid picture has emerged of a prosperous, sophisticated, and industrious community, thriving in the heart of Roman Hertfordshire. We can almost hear the sounds of this lost town. The jingle of coins in the marketplace, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of people dressed in the latest Roman fashions. The evidence in the ground is undeniable. This place was real, it was significant, and it was successful for centuries. And it is this very success, this undeniable significance, that throws us headfirst into the central and most profound mystery of all. Because when we turn from the archaeological evidence to the historical record, we are met with the deafening, inexplicable silence. This bustling hub of trade and industry, a place that by all rights should be a well-documented part of Roman Britain, seems to have been completely erased from history. It is a ghost on the Roman landscape. The mystery is no longer about what this place was, but rather why it was forgotten. We must now explore a series of challenging questions, each one a deeper layer of the enigma, that defy everything we think we know about how the Romans ran their empire. The first and most fundamental of these questions is the simple matter of a name. Every significant settlement in the Roman Empire had a name. The Romans were meticulous administrators, organizers, and, above all, record keepers. They named their cities, their towns, their forts, and even their major country estates. These names were not just for local use. They were essential for taxation, for military administration, for travel, and for trade. They were the addresses on the vast map of the empire. Major towns in Roman Britain are well known to us. Londinium, London, Eboracum, York, Aquisulis, Bath. And right here in Hertfordshire, the major regional capital was Verulamium, St. Albans. These names have survived for 2,000 years because they were written down. They appear on official documents, on stone inscriptions, on milestones, and most importantly for our investigation, on the detailed maps and road guides that the Romans created to manage their vast province. One of the most important of these documents is the Antonine Itinerary. This was an official road book, compiled in the late 2nd or early 3rd century AD, that listed the major routes across the empire and the towns or stations that a traveler would pass through along the way, along with the distances between them. It was the Roman equivalent of a modern GPS or a highway road atlas. Another crucial document is the Puddinger Table, a fascinating medieval copy of an original Roman map that shows the entire road network of the empire, from Britain to India, in a schematic subway map-like format. These documents, along with others like the Ravenna Cosmography, are our primary guides to the geography of Roman Britain. They are the official list of important places. And here is the core of the mystery. The prosperous, industrious, and long-lived settlement we have discovered in Hertfordshire does not appear on any of them. It has no known Roman name. It is, from the perspective of the official Roman record, a complete and utter blank. This is profoundly strange. A small, insignificant farmstead might easily be omitted from such high-level documents. But the evidence we have unearthed suggests this was far more than a simple farm. The sheer volume of artifacts, the evidence of trade and industry, and the planned layout of the settlement all point to a place of regional importance. A place like this, especially one located near major Roman roads, should have been on the map. It should have had a name that would have been known to travelers, to merchants, and to tax collectors. The fact that it doesn't is a historical anomaly of the first order. It's like finding a bustling, unrecorded town the size of a modern-day market town in the middle of a well-mapped country, a town that no government agency seems to know exists. Why was it omitted? Was it a simple oversight? A clerical error that was repeated across multiple official documents? This seems incredibly unlikely given the Romans' legendary attention to administrative detail. Was it because, despite its wealth, it didn't hold an official status that warranted inclusion? Or was there a more deliberate, more sinister reason for its absence from the official record? The missing name is the first layer of the enigma, a puzzle that suggests this place existed outside the normal, documented framework of Roman administration. And this puzzle only deepens when we consider the physical layout of the town itself. The Roman Empire was built on a foundation of cities. The city, or civitas, was the fundamental unit of Roman civilization, a center of administration, law, culture, and commerce. And Roman cities, wherever they were built, from the sands of Africa to the green fields of Britain, followed a certain architectural and social blueprint. A proper Roman town was expected to have a number of key public buildings, structures that were not just functional, but were powerful symbols of Roman power and civic life. The most important of these was the Forum and Basilica complex. The Forum was a large, open public square, the central marketplace and the heart of public life. It was surrounded by shops, temples, and government offices. Adjoining the Forum was the Basilica, a huge long hall that served as the town's law court and public assembly room. This complex was the administrative and commercial core of any self-respecting Roman town. Another essential feature was the public bathhouse, or thermae. This was far more than just a place to get clean. It was the social center of the town, a place where people of all classes could meet, exercise, relax, conduct business, and gossip. A town's bathhouse was a mark of its civic pride and its commitment to the Roman way of life. Other public structures might include temples dedicated to the Roman gods or the imperial cult, theaters or amphitheaters for entertainment, and impressive town walls with monumental gates. These public buildings were the architectural signature of Romanization. They were typically large, expensive structures, built of stone and designed to last for centuries, powerful and permanent statements of a community's wealth, status, and its identity as part of the Roman world. And this brings us to the next profound mystery of the Hertfordshire site. Despite all the evidence of wealth, trade, and a large population, the archaeological excavations have so far failed to find any definitive trace of these major public buildings. The geophysical surveys and the targeted digs have revealed the foundations of numerous smaller, rectangular buildings, which appear to be domestic houses, shops, and workshops. They have revealed ditches and roads, but the massive stone foundations of a forum, a basilica, or a large public bathhouse are conspicuously absent. This is a deeply puzzling situation. How can a settlement be wealthy enough to import luxury goods from across the empire, yet apparently lack the central public buildings that were the very definition of a Roman town? It's like finding a prosperous modern city that has no city hall, no courthouse, and no public library. The absence of these structures challenges our understanding of what this place was. If it wasn't an officially recognized civitas with a full set of public amenities, then what was it? Could it be that the public buildings are simply in a part of the site that hasn't been excavated yet? This is certainly a possibility. Archaeology is a slow and expensive process, and only a small fraction of the total settlement area has been scientifically investigated. Perhaps the remains of a forum or a bathhouse are still lying undiscovered under another part of the field. However, given the extensive geophysical surveys that have been conducted, one would expect a structure of that size to have left a significant footprint, a major anomaly that would be difficult to miss. So far, no such anomaly has been clearly identified. This absence suggests that the settlement had a fundamentally different character from a typical Roman town. It was a place of private enterprise and domestic life, but it may have lacked the official state-sponsored public infrastructure. This reinforces the mystery of its missing name and its absence from the official maps. It seems to have been a place that operated on a different set of rules, a place that grew rich and successful without conforming to the standard Roman urban model. Its success was organic and commercial, rather than official and administrative. And this unconventional character is further highlighted when we consider its location in the wider strategic landscape of Roman Britain. The old saying, "All roads lead to Rome," was more than just a proverb. It was a statement of fact about how the empire was organized. The Romans were master engineers, and their most enduring legacy is the vast network of brilliantly constructed roads that connected every corner of their empire. These roads were the arteries of the Roman world, carrying legions, administrators, tax collectors, and above all, trade. A location on or near a major Roman road was the ancient equivalent of being on a modern highway intersection. It was a prime spot for commerce and communication. The Hertfordshire settlement was perfectly situated to take advantage of this network. It lies in close proximity to several major, well-known Roman roads. The most important of these is Stane Street, not to be confused with the more famous Stane Street that ran south from London, which ran from the major town of Verulamium, St. Albans, to Camulogenum, Colchester, another major city and the former capital of the province. Another key route, Ermine Street, one of the great north-south arteries of Roman Britain, also passed nearby. This location is not an accident. It is a perfect strategic position for a trade hub. It would have been able to control and profit from the flow of goods and people traveling between some of the most important centers in the southeast of the province. A settlement in such a prime location would be expected to have a significant strategic importance to the Roman military and administration. And this leads us to our next puzzling question. For a site that seems to be a wealthy trade hub located at a strategic crossroads, there is a complete lack of any significant military presence. A typical Roman strategy for securing a new territory was to build a network of forts, castra, at key strategic points, such as river crossings or road junctions. These forts housed the legionaries and auxiliary troops who kept the peace and protected the vital arteries of communication and trade. As an area became more peaceful and Romanized, many of these forts evolved into civilian towns. We would expect a settlement of this size and importance, in such a strategic location, to either have begun as a military fort or to have had a significant military installation nearby to protect it. Yet, the archaeological evidence for a major military presence is missing. The excavations have not revealed the characteristic V-shaped defensive ditches, the massive earthen ramparts, or the distinctive barracks blocks of a Roman fort. There is no evidence of a large-scale military garrison. While a few military-related artifacts like pieces of armor or harness fittings have been found, these are scattered and could easily belong to retired soldiers who settled here, or to individuals passing through. They do not indicate the presence of an entire legionary or auxiliary unit. This lack of a military footprint is another piece of the puzzle that doesn't quite fit. Why would the Roman authorities allow such a wealthy and strategically located trade hub to exist without a formal military presence to protect and control it? It suggests, once again, that this settlement operated outside the standard framework of Roman provincial administration. It was not a military town, and it was not an official administrative town. It seems to have been a purely commercial entity, a place that grew powerful and prosperous through trade alone, existing in a kind of administrative gray area. It was important, but it was not official. This unconventional character might help explain its absence from the maps and the lack of grand public buildings. But it also raises the final, most haunting question of all. If this place was so successful for so long, what happened to it? Why did it end? Every town has a story, and every story has an ending. The final chapter in the life of this lost Hertfordshire community is perhaps its greatest mystery. What happened to the thousands of people who lived here? Why did this vibrant hub of commerce and industry vanish so completely that its very existence was forgotten for nearly 2,000 years? When archaeologists examine a ruined settlement, they are trained to look for clues to its destruction. A thick black layer of ash and charcoal in the archaeological record, for example, is a clear sign of a catastrophic fire. It could indicate that the town was deliberately sacked and burned by invaders, perhaps during one of the many rebellions or pirate raids that plagued Roman Britain. The famous destruction of Colchester, London, and St. Albans by the forces of Queen Boudica in 60 to 61 AD left just such a burn layer, a clear and violent end to the story of those early cities. But at the Hertfordshire site, there is no evidence of such a widespread, violent destruction. There is no thick burn layer. There is no collection of skeletons with weapon injuries to suggest a massacre. The end of this town, it seems, was not a sudden fiery cataclysm. So, if it wasn't destroyed in a war, what other fate could it have met? Perhaps it was a victim of economic decline. The late Roman Empire, particularly in the 4th century, was a time of great instability. The economy faltered, the currency was devalued, and the trade networks that had sustained this town began to break down. As the Roman legions were gradually withdrawn from Britain in the early 5th century to deal with crises elsewhere in the empire, the province was left vulnerable. The centralized Roman administration collapsed, and the economy likely reverted to a more localized, less monetized system. In such an environment, a specialized trade hub like our Hertfordshire settlement would have been hit very hard. Its entire reason for being long-distance trade within the secure framework of the Roman Empire had vanished. Without the flow of goods and money, the town's economy would have collapsed. The people would have been forced to leave, to drift away to find new ways to make a living, perhaps returning to subsistence farming. In this scenario, the town didn't die in a blaze of glory. It simply faded away. People packed up what they could carry and left, abandoning their homes and workshops to the slow, relentless forces of nature. The wooden buildings would have rotted, the stone foundations would have been covered by soil, and within a few generations, the once bustling town would have disappeared back into the green landscape, its memory fading with each passing year. This theory of slow decline and abandonment fits the archaeological evidence or lack thereof very well. It explains why the town is so rich in lost artifacts. As people left, they would have dropped things or left behind broken or unwanted items. It explains the lack of a destruction layer. But it doesn't fully explain the complete and utter amnesia surrounding the site. Even towns that were slowly abandoned often retained their names in local folklore, or their ruins remained visible as a landmark for centuries. But this place vanished completely. This leads us to the unsettling possibility that the story of its end is not just one of simple abandonment, but of a more complex and mysterious departure. The questions stack up, one on top of the other. A town with no name, with no major public buildings, with no military fort, and with no clear story of its demise. Each question deepens the enigma. This was not a normal Roman town. It was an anomaly, a place that broke the rules. And it is this unconventional character that forces us to look for unconventional explanations, to explore the theories and possibilities that might finally rewrite the history of this forgotten place, and solve the mystery of why it was so completely and utterly erased from memory. We have arrived at the heart of the enigma. The archaeological evidence paints a clear picture of a thriving, wealthy, and industrious Roman-era community in Hertfordshire. Yet the historical record is a complete blank. This settlement, which by all accounts should be a known and documented place, is a ghost. It has no name, no official status on Roman maps, no grand public buildings, and no clear story of its end. The conventional explanations begin to fall short. We are faced with a historical paradox, a puzzle that requires us to think outside the standard models of Roman Britain. To solve this mystery, we must now move from presenting the evidence to proposing solutions. We must explore the different theories and possibilities that could explain the strange, unconventional nature of this forgotten town. Each theory offers a different lens through which to view the evidence, a different potential identity for this lost community. It is a process of rewriting history, of filling in the blank space on the map with a story that finally makes sense of all the clues. Our first theory proposes a solution that is both simple and elegant, that this was never a public town at all. This first theory suggests that we have been making a fundamental mistake in trying to categorize the Hertfordshire site as a town, in the public administrative sense. It proposes that what we have found are the remains of a large, privately owned industrial and agricultural estate, known in the Roman world as a villa rustica. The Roman villa was not just a luxurious country house for the wealthy elite, though it often included one. It was the center of a vast commercial enterprise, a combination of a farm, a factory, and a country estate, all rolled into one. A wealthy Roman or a rich, Romanized Briton would own a huge tract of land, and the villa complex would be the administrative heart of that estate. It would be home not just to the landowner's family, but to a large population of workers, managers, slaves, and skilled artisans who lived and worked on the estate. This model provides a surprisingly elegant explanation for many of the site's most puzzling features. Firstly, it would explain the immense wealth and the luxury imported goods. The owner of such an estate would have been incredibly rich, with the personal wealth and the commercial connections to import the finest pottery from Gaul and the best glassware from Germany for his own household. The prosperity we see in the artifacts would be a reflection of the owner's personal fortune, not the collective wealth of a public town. Secondly, the private estate theory perfectly explains the lack of major public buildings. A private villa would have no need for a public forum, a basilica, or a large public bathhouse. It would have had its own luxurious private bath suite for the owner and his family, but not a massive public complex. The buildings found by archaeologists, the houses, workshops, and barns, are exactly what we would expect to see on a large working estate. The houses would be for the estate workers, the workshops for the on-site craftsmen, and the larger barns for storing grain and processing agricultural products. The theory also solves the mystery of the missing name and its absence from official Roman maps. A private estate, no matter how large or wealthy, would not typically be listed on an official road guide like the Antonine itinerary. These documents were concerned with official state-run towns and military posts, not private property. The estate would have had a name, of course perhaps named after its owner, like the Villa of Julianus, but in this light the Hertfordshire site transforms from a ghost town into a lost powerhouse. It was the economic engine of a vast agricultural and industrial enterprise, owned and operated by a single powerful family or individual. The hundreds of coins found would be from the payment of wages to the skilled workers and the sale of the estate's produced grain, wool, pottery, metalwork at local markets. This theory fits the evidence remarkably well. It accounts for the wealth, the industry, the types of buildings, and the lack of official recognition. It paints a compelling picture of a self-contained world of private enterprise, a slice of Roman-style capitalism thriving in the English countryside. It is a strong and plausible contender for the true identity of our lost settlement. And yet, there is one small issue. While the villa model is powerful, some archaeologists feel the settlement seems a little too large, a little too sprawling and town-like, to be just a single private estate. This has led to a second theory, one that keeps the commercial focus but changes the ownership structure. This second theory proposes that the settlement was not the property of a single Roman owner, but was instead a native British trading post that grew powerful and prosperous by embracing the opportunities offered by the Roman conquest. Before the Romans arrived, Britain was not an empty land. It was populated by a complex network of Iron Age Celtic tribes, each with its own territories, traditions, and centers of power. When the Romans conquered Britain, they did not wipe out the entire native population. Instead, a complex process of cultural exchange and adaptation began. Many native British communities and leaders saw the advantages of cooperating with the new Roman power. They adopted Roman customs, Roman technologies, and the Roman economic system because it offered a path to greater wealth and influence. This theory suggests that our Hertfordshire site was one such place. It may have started as an important Iron Age British settlement, perhaps the center of a local tribe. Due to its strategic location near ancient trackways that later became Roman roads, it was already a natural hub for local trade. When the Romans arrived, the leaders of this community made a smart choice. Instead of resisting, they collaborated. They became key local partners for the Roman administration and military, helping to supply them with grain, leather, and other local resources. In return, they gained access to the vast Roman market and the wealth that came with it. The settlement began to transform. The inhabitants started to adopt Roman ways. They built rectangular, timber-framed houses instead of their traditional roundhouses. They began to use Roman pottery, wear Roman-style brooches, and, most importantly, they started to use Roman currency. The settlement grew organically into a bustling, Romanized trading post. It would have been a vibrant, multicultural place, a melting pot where Roman merchants and officials mixed with native British farmers and craftsmen. This theory explains many of the site's unique features just as well as the villa theory, but from a different perspective. The wealth of the site would be the collective wealth of a successful community of native British entrepreneurs who had successfully integrated themselves into the Roman economy. The lack of grand, official Roman public buildings is also perfectly explained. As a native settlement, it would not have been granted the official status of a Roman civitas, or chartered town. It would therefore have had no right, and perhaps no desire, to build a formal forum or basilica. Its public spaces would have been more organic, a large, open market area rather than a formal stone-paved square. It was Roman in its economy and its material culture, but it remained British in its administrative and social structure. This would also explain its absence from the official Roman maps. The Romans mapped their own official towns and forts, but they would have been less concerned with documenting the native settlements, even the prosperous ones. It would have been known to local administrators and tax collectors, but it wouldn't have made it onto the emperor's official road atlas. This theory is very appealing because it highlights the agency and adaptability of the native British people. It shows them not just as passive subjects of the Roman Empire, but as active participants who skillfully navigated the new political and economic landscape to their own advantage. It paints a picture of a successful fusion of cultures, a place that was both British and Roman at the same time. This model of a native trading hub is a powerful alternative to the private villa theory, and it shares some similarities with our third possibility, which focuses specifically on the settlement's relationship with the road. Our third theory offers another compelling explanation for the site's unique character. It suggests that the settlement was a specific type of Roman-era community known as a vicus. A vicus was an unofficial civilian settlement that often grew up organically alongside a Roman military fort or, as is relevant here, along a major Roman road. These were the service towns of the Roman world, the ancient equivalent of the truck stops, motels, and commercial strips that line our modern highways. Imagine a major Roman road like Stane Street, bustling with traffic. You would have legions marching, government officials in carriages, and most of all, a constant stream of merchant carts hauling goods. All of these travelers needed places to stop, to rest, to eat, to feed their animals, and to repair their equipment. And so, all along these major routes, small unofficial settlements would spring up to cater to this need. A blacksmith would set up a shop to repair wagons and reshoe horses. A potter would set up a workshop to sell wares to locals and travelers alike. An innkeeper would open a tavern or kapona, offering a hot meal and a rough place to sleep for the night. Over time, these small clusters of enterprise could grow into large, sprawling settlements. They were often linear in shape, following the line of the road, and were characterized by a jumble of workshops, shops, and houses. This model of a vicus or a road town fits the Hertfordshire evidence very well. Its strategic location near major roads makes it a perfect candidate. The strong evidence for industry and commerce is exactly what we would expect to find in a settlement dedicated to serving trade and travel. The wealth of the site would be generated by the constant flow of traffic on the roads. Every traveler and every merchant cart that passed by was a potential customer. The sheer volume of this traffic would have created a thriving and very profitable local economy. Crucially, the vicus model also explains the settlement's unofficial character. Because they grew organically and were not officially planned and chartered by the state, vici typically lacked the grand public buildings of a formal civitas. They had shops, inns, and workshops, but usually no forum basilica or large public bathhouse. They were places of business, not centers of government. This would also explain their absence from official maps and itineraries. The Antonine itinerary, for example, listed the official mansions, or state-run stopping places, which were often fortified and had formal inns. A vicus, as an unofficial civilian settlement, would likely not have been included. It was part of the roadside landscape, known to every traveler, but not important enough for the official state record. The theory of the Hertfordshire site as a large, successful vicus is therefore very strong. It aligns perfectly with the archaeological evidence. A strategic roadside location, a focus on trade and industry, a lack of major public buildings, and an unofficial status. It paints a dynamic picture of a bustling, hard-working community, a vital service hub that kept the wheels of commerce turning on the great Roman roads of Britain. All three of these theories, the private villa, the native trading post, and the roadside vicus, are plausible and well-reasoned. They each provide a logical explanation for the strange mix of wealth and unofficial status that defines the site. It is even possible that the reality was a combination of all three. Perhaps it began as a native trading post, which then evolved into a major vicus that was dominated by a single wealthy villa owner. But all of these theories are based on the assumption that the settlement's history, while unrecorded, was otherwise normal. They explain its identity, but they struggle to fully explain the totality of its disappearance, the complete and utter erasure from memory. This leads us to our final, most speculative and most intriguing possibility. This final theory takes us into a darker and more clandestine realm. It proposes that the Hertfordshire settlement was not just forgotten through the slow decay of time, or because of its unofficial status. It suggests that its history was deliberately and systematically suppressed. It was erased from the record for a reason. This theory posits that the town was the center of some kind of forbidden or dangerous activity that brought it into direct conflict with the Roman authorities, and that after this conflict was resolved, Rome took steps to ensure that the place and its story would be forgotten. What kind of activity could warrant such a drastic response? One possibility is that the town was a center of political rebellion. Roman Britain was not always a peaceful province. There were several major revolts against Roman rule, the most famous being the Boudiccan Rebellion. It is possible that our Hertfordshire town, with its wealth and strategic location, became the headquarters for a later, unrecorded uprising. Perhaps a powerful local leader used the town's riches to fund a private army and challenge Roman authority. If this rebellion was eventually and brutally crushed by the Roman legions, the punishment would have been severe. The town might have been destroyed, its leaders executed, and as the ultimate punishment, its name and existence would have been struck from all official records in a process known as damnatio memoriae, damnation of memory. Another, perhaps more compelling possibility is that the town was the center of a forbidden religious cult. The Roman Empire was generally tolerant of other religions, as long as they did not conflict with the authority of the state and the emperor. However, certain cults were seen as subversive and dangerous. The most famous example is Christianity in its early days, which was periodically and violently persecuted. Another example was the religion of the Druids, the powerful priestly class of the Celtic peoples. The Romans saw the Druids as a major source of political resistance and actively suppressed their practices. Could the Hertfordshire settlement have been a secret stronghold of a revived Druidic cult, or perhaps another mystery religion that the Roman authorities deemed a threat? If so, its activities would have been conducted in secret, which would explain the lack of obvious temples to mainstream Roman gods. If this forbidden cult was discovered, the Roman response would have been swift and merciless. The cult would have been stamped out, and the town that harbored it might have been dismantled and deliberately forgotten, its story suppressed to prevent the heretical ideas from spreading. This theory of deliberate suppression is powerful because it provides a single dramatic reason for all of the site's anomalies. Its lack of official status would be because its primary function was illegal and clandestine. The absence of mainstream public buildings would be because its true public life revolved around secret rituals, not the open forum. And its complete disappearance from history would be the result of a conscious act of political or religious censorship. It is a tantalizing and dramatic theory. The main challenge, of course, is the lack of direct evidence. The no-burn layer argument seems to contradict the idea of a violent suppression, though a town could be dismantled and its people exiled without being burned to the ground. It remains a speculative possibility, but one that fits the strange pattern of evidence in a uniquely compelling way. It suggests that beneath the quiet Hertfordshire field lies not just a forgotten town, but a forbidden one, a place with a dark secret that Rome itself wanted to bury forever. In the end, we are left with a spectrum of fascinating possibilities. Was it a powerful private estate, a thriving native hub, a bustling roadside town, or a suppressed center of rebellion? The truth may be one of these or a combination of them all. But whatever its true identity, the 1,000 relics of Hertfordshire have given us a precious gift. They have resurrected a lost world, forcing us to re-examine the history of Roman Britain, and to acknowledge the complex, vibrant, and mysterious life that once flourished, and then vanished, right under our feet. The Hertfordshire relics are more than just a collection of old objects. They are the lost puzzle pieces of Roman Britain. They force us to reconsider the history we thought we knew, revealing a complex and prosperous world that existed outside the famous, documented cities, a vibrant past still waiting to be fully rediscovered. If the past still whispers to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ancient Relics Keeper, because some mysteries were never meant to be buried.